What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 23 of the PlayStation Effect. I'm your host, Marco. Joining me is my good friend and co-host, Pablo, and each week we explore the past, present, and future of PlayStation. And in this episode, we give our raw reactions to Sony's CFO doubling down on killing physical discs in 2028. Plus, we're giving PlayStation a mid-year review as we grade the good, the bad, and the ugh of all things PlayStation this year. So get settled, get situated, subscribe if you enjoy the show, and let's get started. First off, by talking about what we've been playing lately, Pablo. I'm going to tag in first because where we left off last week was me getting my hands on 007 First Light, and you've had a very vested interest in seeing how this game worked out for me as I've been playing through it. So I figured I'd start there. Now, as a Bond fan, I came into this with a lot of excitement, but as a gamer, I came into this with a lot of questions. Can IO Interactive create a believable James Bond of their own? Can they make the action, combat, and bombast feel good to play? Can they make spycraft feel clever, intuitive, and fun? And after about 4 hours of playing the game, I got my answers, and some answers were good, and some not so much. So I think where I'll start is with the Bond universe. Really good cast of characters, from the MI6 team to even the villains. But I will be that guy, and I will say I'm in the minority by saying that I'm not a huge fan of this particular James Bond, who is played by real-life actor Patrick Gibson. It's not because he's not suave enough, Pablo. I get that this is a origin story of how Bond became Bond, but I think there's such a thing as dialing the Bondisms back so far that you lose his natural nuances that make him kind of stand out from a crowd. Yeah. You know what I mean? Did you like him, by the way?
I did, because I came into this from the perspective of Ian Fleming's novels, where this was much more that sort of characterization of Bond. And I think that's a completely fair assessment on your part, where you're coming into it from that point of view and not getting exactly what you thought you were going to get. So, but I did like him. I
think for me, at best, his performance in dialogue came off more like typical cocky video game lead than a true James Bond. I think that was my problem. And I think that also goes for his appearance as well. I hate to get that fickle, but I do acknowledge that the Daniel Craigs of the world have broken conventions of how James Bond can look, that's for sure. But I think even with him, there was still a sophistication to his character that still made it work. Whereas I think Patrick Gibson's Bond doesn't quite look the part. Broad nose, scarred face, brown hair, bug eyes. You know, I think it sticks out like a sore thumb when missions like the nightclub one early on call for this tall, dark, and handsome contact to meet with somebody there. And yet the agents that you're working with immediately say, send Bond. You know, the pale, brown-haired, scarred Bond that's not tall, dark, and handsome. He can go do it. So I think that's kind of the disconnect for me on the part of James Bond. But I think what I will say is that the real saving grace of this Bond universe is the supporting cast. So characters like Greenway, Moneypenny, Q, even Bovma, I think they make this game feel alive and engaging and cinematic and more authentically Bond in ways that Bond himself doesn't quite do enough of, for me, which is kind of where the disappointment was, I guess.
I think they might have oversteered a little bit on the origins of it all, right?
Yeah.
And definitely you're waiting for that moment where Bond walks into a party, he fixes the cuffs of his shirt, looking nice and suave. They don't really have that moment. I think that they were pretty confident that this was going to be successful and that they were going to have more games to elaborate and be more of that Bond that you and I have fallen in love with. But I do think that I also was waiting for the moment in time where finally James Bond has arrived, and we never quite got that. I do agree with that.
Yeah, but you know, like in my mind, I'm also thinking like, okay, well, there's worse fates for this game than having an inconsistent cast or an okay Bond, right? So that's when I kind of zeroed more into the gameplay to see how the actual game brings Bond to life. But I think that's honestly what let me down the most. bad shooting mechanics, clunky melee combat. The stealth mechanics are a little shallow, and the gadgets were a little underwhelming. They kind of felt more like Watch Dogs powers than something that was truly from MI6. And all with this very slow, grindy, investigative flow that really felt like Diet Hitman. And I wanted more out of a Bond game than pretending to be a hotel manager in a chauffeur outfit. You know what I mean? I wanted more out of a Bond game than turning on a vacuum cleaner remotely to distract a maid. And I think that's what confuses me about the critical perception of the game because, look, I get it. It's gorgeous. It's polished. It has an incredible presentation. I take nothing away from that. And for a lot of people, those strengths can help mask a game's more glaring weaknesses. But for me, fighting through those janky moments of gameplay and staying motivated to see this arc of James Bond take shape became a pretty hard ask. But I'm not saying it's a terrible game. I'm not one of those people that goes, I hate it, and therefore it's bad. It's just, I think I was looking for a little bit different of an experience than what I got out of this. And nothing wrong with that, just not for me.
No, and that's totally fair. I really, really like this game. I didn't find the shooting mechanics or the melee to be terrible, though I will say that they're definitely not great. But overall, I think as I got deeper into the game, I really liked what they did with the story. I would say, based on sort of your current take on the game, I think as the game went on, you would probably hate it more because especially the Watch Dogs part, there's a part of that game towards the end where you have to use all those gadgets, and it is, even for me, was like, this isn't the most fun that this game can be. So, yeah, I don't even know if it's worth it for you to kind of revisit. I'm waiting for the new missions to come out, but not every game is for everybody, brother. You know?
No, 100%. 100%. So from there, I was able to kind of double back to Halo Campaign Evolve, which I had started up. So for me, before I dive into my experience with the game, I want to say something that's unrelated, but also related. Okay. Over the last 1 or 2 months, and I've told you this, I've scaled back my social media consumption considerably, especially on X. That was the big one. Not only was doom scrolling consuming too much of my time, but it's constant exposure to this cesspool of negativity no matter where you go, especially in the gaming arena. And in the case of Halo Campaign Evolve specifically, I knew there would be a contingent of Halo fans who would be completely insufferable about this game, right? Not to say that they wouldn't have valid criticisms, because I think there are some fair things you can raise against this game in the way that it was made. But sometimes people go too far, right? And it can be the piss in your Fruit Loops if you're not careful. And I didn't want that problem. You know what I mean? So as I turned this new leaf on social media, I didn't come into this game feeling as overloaded with those social media takes telling me how I'm supposed to feel. I kind of came into it with more of an open mind, right? So I fire up the game on my Series X, right? Because like I said last week, playing this game on PlayStation would have felt weird to me for a variety of reasons. So I start off with the bonus missions, and I get about 2 to 3 minutes into it, and I just kind of stopped and said to myself, do I have cataracts? This game, Pablo, at least on base consoles, is one of the blurriest games I've ever seen. The combination of chromatic aberration
that you can't turn off.
No, film grain, which you can't turn off either, and just the usual quirks of Unreal Engine 5. That stuff really does a number on the visual clarity of this game. And it got to the point where it was really distracting me from focusing on the game itself. So I grab the phone and I text a friend named Pablo and I say, hey, this game feels like Vaseline to the face. But because Pablo doesn't support his friends, he tells me, I think it looks great. So
I tend to look at the good things in life while you tend to hate everything. I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Yeah, no. There's the gaslighting. It's on my notes. And I wrote, so after Pablo finished gaslighting me, I tried to play the game a little bit more, right? But now here's the thing, Pablo. Now I got the PS5 Pro version on my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Because at this point, I am so turned off by the visual clarity that I'm almost ready to break my vow and get it on PS5. But you know what? I'm like, okay, wait, let me first see if Digital Foundry has a YouTube video comparing it on all the consoles so I can kind of see the differences, right? So I go on YouTube, and wouldn't you know, Digital Foundry had just posted their big comparison video like 50 seconds prior to me checking. So I watched the video, and not only does Digital Foundry say that Halo looks substantially better on PS5 Pro, but they also said the cutscenes don't stutter on PlayStation like they do on Xbox, which is something that you called out last time.
They stutter.
And I was like, ooh, okay, this is interesting. So now I'm sweating because I just talked a big game on the podcast last week about not supporting Xbox's multi-platform strategy and whatnot. So I kind of chill out and I said, no, I'm good. I'll make it work on Xbox. And about 3.5 minutes later, I had Halo downloading on my PS5 Pro because I ain't shit. I really ain't. But look, the reality of the situation is from what little I played of the game on Xbox beforehand, I was actually enjoying it, despite the visual issues. I was having an absolute blast. So I just wanted to play the game at its absolute best. So the download finishes, I boot up the game on PS5, right? As it starts loading up, I'm sitting there thinking, how weird is this going to feel? Because remember, I'm not with this whole Halo on PlayStation thing, but me and my hypocritical ass are seconds away from jumping on the game at this point. So the butt's tight. So I finally get into the game. And I got to say, I had the time of my sorry-ass life. I really did.
Sorry-ass lesbian. That's really crazy.
Did. Listen, I had zero issues getting accustomed to playing it on the PS5 controller, which I thought was going to be the biggest issue for me. The visual clarity was indeed better. Still has some problems, but still a lot better. The cutscenes are buttery smooth, and I kind of felt right at home. Where are you at, though? You said you had some other opinions on it. Talk to me.
Yeah, it's probably the game that I played the most out of all the Halo games. I played the single-player campaign like over and over and over and over again. And so playing it here, I can appreciate all the upgrade and the quality of life updates, the fact that you can sprint. But to me, it just didn't do enough for me to feel like I need to kind of keep going with this experience, because it still kind of feels like been there, done that sort of thing. And with that comes the fact that Halo itself just feels like it needs some sort of revamp. And so this is kind of what's showing me where Halo was and how cool it was, and how it doesn't really compare when you look at modern first-person shooters, at least for me. There's no sophistication in that gameplay. The story is cool and all, but I know that like the back of my hand. So I'm at a point right now where it feels like I'm playing a game that I've played so many times before, and I have so many other things that I need to be doing game-wise that I just, I'm probably just going to go ahead and let it go for now.
I get it.
Did you see the numbers on PlayStation?
I did, yeah. It sounds like, and I don't know if the data is any different now, but I saw something about only 1% of active PlayStation users have purchased Halo.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think it cracked the top 20, apparently.
No, and that's kind of why I think like this is the last Halo we get.
Oh,
on
for sure.
PlayStation. This is it. But hey, it's here, and I recommend it. I like it. But that's all I got going on my side of things, Pablo. But I know you wanted to chime in with a very interesting demo that you've had your eyes on for a while.
Yeah.
And that's Mortal Shell 2.
Yes, sir.
So where did this land with you? What do you think about it?
Before we even get there, let me kind of paint the picture a little bit, because a lot of people don't know what Mortal Shell is, right?
No.
When Mortal Shell first came out, it's pretty hardcore for even like the fair weather Souls fan, because we're looking at a game here that had a lot of great ideas and people really loved it because it was very much a Dark Souls sort of Souls-like game, right? A lot of games tried to do the Bloodborne stuff. This was a straight up one-for-one Dark Souls emulation, and people loved it for that. But it had a lot of things that weren't perfect, a lot of limitations. Graphically, it wasn't great. So a lot of people were looking forward to Mortal Shell 2, because this is one of those games that people say, if it gets a sequel, it's going to be very good. And let me tell you, I've been playing it, and those people might be right, because it is absolutely the biggest glow up that I've ever seen from the first game and its sequel. It is a massive overhaul in that it is graphically way better looking. Its gameplay is so much better, and it is still a Dark Souls sort of take on the genre. However, they are bridging the gap between a Souls-like and an action game, because they've taken out the stamina completely. In Souls games, stamina is massive, right? It's what gets you to dodge, to block, all that stuff. Really what this is doing is trying to bridge that gap, where it definitely feels like a Souls game, with the fact that you don't have to worry about stamina is a huge brain fuck for you, because now that's a part of your brain that you're no longer having to account for. And I think that's so dope, because every time we get a new Souls-like game, I always look for the thing that is setting it apart from soft games. And this is massive. It's huge. And I really think that all the changes that were made specifically to the shells as well, for people who don't know, Mortal Shell, you're playing this character and you get to put on these shells. In the first game, these shells were different sort of player builds. They were very specific to weapons. In this game, in Mortal Shell 2, their shells are still there. They have their own ability. But now you're not tied to one specific weapon from that shell. You can use any weapon that you would like. So you have more flexibility when it comes to building your character. So they really took all the complaints that people had about the game and completely not only changed it, but made it better without compromising their vision. So for me, this was a game that I was looking forward to anyway, but now with this open beta, which really just 3-hour demo, it is rocketed to one of my most anticipated games of the year because I am looking for that next Souls-like. Every year I seem to get one. Last year was Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers. This year I thought I was going to be Neo 3. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to be Beast of Reincarnation. But now Mortal Shell 2 is absolutely fantastic so far. I am curious to see how they're going to keep that up throughout the entire experience because level design also a massive upgrade. So I am wondering other areas of the levels, are they going to have that sophistication to its development? Because it looks like they really put their heart and soul into this, and it is panning out to be possibly one of the best games of the year for me. So I'm hoping that it delivers when it's all said and done come towards the end of this month. So yeah, can't wait, man.
Yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than having that Dark Horse Souls-like game come out of nowhere and be like the Lies of P type of experience that you're just like, excuse me, you have no business being this good. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I did try it out for a few minutes. Admittedly, my palate is not as attuned to this genre as you. So I can only appreciate it up to a certain point.
Yeah.
One thing that I did definitely realize playing it on PS5 Pro is it looks great. It is a great looking video game.
Beautiful.
That's number one. I would also say that the combat felt really smooth.
Yeah.
I really loved the animations too. It doesn't feel janky or twitchy in that way that feels a little dissatisfying. And that can happen sometimes in the Souls-like genre where it's so much about timing and frames and you have to really mind that kind of thing. I liked the fact that there's still a little bit of that there, but it's also stylish enough where it's like, okay, I like looking at this game when things start ramping up. So I definitely will give it credit where credit's due there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say concerned, but I'd be most mindful of level design in terms of aesthetic because that dreary gray look can be a little too much at certain points, and I found myself getting a little spun around because everything looks kind of the same.
Yeah.
So, well, in the meantime, let's go ahead and move on to some of our big topics this week, Pablo, and let's begin with a little update on the physical disc scandal because Sony CFO Lin Tao has announced that they will not change their plans to end physical disc production in 2028 and that they are not seeing any business impact at all after announcing this all-digital future, Pablo. So
cold-blooded.
Oh, man, and she said it with a straight face, too. Yeah. I saw the video. She had no heart. I want to get your initial reactions when you saw that Sony doubled down. What was your take on that?
I wasn't surprised here. There's a deeper business impact here. They've obviously dedicated time, money, effort into development and growth of their platform future beyond this year. And so I think they're way too deep right now in everything. And I think there's no backlash or petition that's going to change that because it would mean that they would have to revert in such a way that they would lose millions of dollars. And I'm talking about PS6 and what they want that to be. And so they're starting early here, and I just don't think that there's an avenue here for them to go anywhere else. And so they're putting on their business suits, getting the lady on there with the straight face and telling you, nope. It's heartless and feels so disconnected, but I think it's because they have no other way to go about it. They've already doubled down on this financially, so it's unfortunate.
It really is. My reaction was still that I was upset, and I was upset because of what I've been saying for weeks on end, is there's a better way to communicate all of this to your consumers. And this comment about not ending physical disc production was not directed towards consumers at all. And that's what disappoints me, is that of all this time they've had to kind of look at what the response has been online, they have offered nothing in the way of communication since that announcement to soothe the concerns of the community, to provide any sort of, like I said before, FAQs or any sort of plans or promotions or anything at all that would give you a little bit more peace of mind about where they're heading. All it is, no, we're staying the course. And that to me is a level of coldness that I think really stands out to me, right?
Yeah.
Because they have had opportunities all these weeks for some form of damage control, for some form of correspondence with the community. Even if you can't reverse the decision, there's ways to talk to the people And they have chosen not to do that. So the fact that Lin Tao, or anybody from Sony for that matter, is not communicating to us is what still makes me really upset with the situation.
Yeah,
so,
because they could easily just sit there and, have a state of play or even just a video. Hey, this is what we're looking at. This is our future. This is what we are aiming for, and this is why we made decisions that may seem crazy or may seem anti-consumer, and really what it is, it's to kind of shore up our position in 2028 and beyond. And people are not going to be happy about that. People will be like, oh, never mind, you're right. That's not what they're looking for. We're just looking for an explanation. We want to know for a fact that you're not doing this because you decided one day to wake up and fuck up everybody's world, right? That's not what you wanted to do. But they still have not even given us as consumers the time of day to just give us a 5-minute explanation as to why. And I agree with you. That's why everybody's so upset.
And they also say that there's been no business impact to this. And I don't think that they're lying about that. I don't think that's something that you're legally allowed to lie about. So I'm sure they're telling the truth there. My question to you is, do you think that could change, though? Do you think there is a potential future, maybe either short-term or long-term, where this decision does create a sizable business impact? Or do you think that they really will be okay and that they won't see as much of a dent as we're all thinking they could?
Look, the industry is in a major flux. Anything can happen. Here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah. But I think Sony is confident that PlayStation is eternal. And their moves towards a PlayStation-specific future isn't just them. It's an industry-wide thing. So they're just waiting for everybody to jump on that wagon eventually. And I think that what I'm looking at here, when it comes to the financials of it all, is this isn't going to be just something that PlayStation has to suffer through. Everybody else in the industry will eventually get here. And when you look at the breakdown, I think 65% of first-party games that go into physical is what Sony makes. Digital, it's 100%. They make all that money, and they don't have to pay money to print the discs. So even if the physical media people fall off, stop playing games, or go somewhere else, they're making that up with the 100% financial gain of digital games anyway. So there will be an impact, but I don't think it's going to be enough to where, oh no, PlayStation, we need to completely change what we're doing. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I would say it's too early to tell because, to your point, things can change very fast.
Yeah.
And secondly, we don't know what they're going to do once this goes into effect, right? So we don't know if they're going to start shooting the prices up of every game and if they're going to start limiting the amount of weekly sales and discounts and promotions. If that starts to happen and you're looking at a version of PlayStation that is offering you very little, if any, discounts that are of real substance or value, then could that rouse some people up? Yeah, because now you're making people make harder decisions at point of sale, which is now your storefront, and that would lead to potentially people buying less games because they can't afford as many, because they don't have as many options now. They don't have as many discounts to work with now. And if you're not doing anything in the way of like having a better return policy, which is something that they've been I've heard rumblings that they might do something close to what Steam does, where you can make a return in 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have something like that, again, you're asking people to just take a leap of faith and just buy something at full price, no matter how long ago it's been out for, and you can get fucked. So can people get sick of that? Yes, they can.
Yes.
Is that enough to make a business impact, air quotes? I don't know yet, because it just depends on how many people are sick of it all. And now we're in an age where people can easily get into PC gaming in a simpler way with PC handhelds, with the Steam machine, if that's your thing, or people can definitely go to Nintendo or even Xbox if Xbox decides to go the opposite route, which I doubt, but it's out there. So now you have a lot of people with options. And I think PlayStation tried to get ahead of that scenario by saying, well, we're not putting our games on PC anymore, so you have to go here. This is where a blank happens. That's their new tagline. This is where something happens. So they're trying to kind of get away from giving you flexibility. And could that wear on people enough for people to go, all right, fuck y'all? Yeah, but it just depends on how many,
It's not going to affect the 4% of people who buy multiple games a month, the white whales. That's really kind of what they're looking at anyway. When you look at all the changes, it almost feels like they're good because that's the base that they're kind of catering to anyway. So once again, anti-consumerism all over the place. Somebody get these beggars out of here. That's what Sony's saying.
No brokies. We need more Pablos, because Pablo be buying games, y'all.
No, not recently, man. Not recently. I've taken a new approach to buying games. It's not buying no games.
He full of shit. I smell the doo-doo on him. But third and final question, though, Pablo, all jokes aside. As we know, the community really did try to pound the pavement to reverse this decision. And of course it didn't work because of what Lin Tao confirmed. What do you think the community can do next about this?
I think we've been going about it the wrong way. Trying to dissuade a company that the thing they did is anti-consumer. They know, by telling them, hey, this is anti-consumer. That was never going to work. I think, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying give up. There's other avenues. And I think what we have to do is we have to really force legislation, look at what it means to own games, look at stuff like control pricing, and we got to petition for these changes, because if we're going to go down this road, if this is the future of the industry, we cannot go as is. We have to definitely look at ways that we can get congressmen, people involved, because this is a consumer issue, and we have to be able to know, and they have to have guarantees that once you buy a game, whether it's licensed or not, that they don't have the ability to take that game right out of your library. That they don't have the ability to, guess what? Because you can't buy it anywhere else, this game is now $75. It's now $80. That is not something that we can really stand for, because they will take advantage. Because they've shown that all they want to do, specifically Sony, is make money. To the point where when you look at games that are being sold in stores, Sony does not sell digital versions of games in stores. You cannot go to GameStop and buy a digital card for a PlayStation game. They want all the money they can possibly get. And if they have the ability to change pricing on you, to take games out of your library because they don't want to pay the licensing fee, they will do that. So we have to go about it in a more serious, a more specific way. And when it comes down to it's legislation, and it seems silly, but it's really the way we need to go.
No, it's not silly at all, man. It's not silly at all. It's exactly what I think that people should be doing, pushing more for better protections for the consumer. We're heading into a new age now where physical media across the board is kind of waning in many respects. In some industries more than others, but it's still a problem, and ownership is a real point of contention that I think deserves more than just a company deciding what's going to happen and just telling you to go fuck yourself if you don't like it.
Right.
I think that's a problem. So you're absolutely right. That's a great answer. I'm going to say, along with that, my thing is it's time for the community to make some hard decisions. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, as I've heard a lot of backlash and all the outrage, that people are still not really comfortable with making a really tough decision about their future with PlayStation. Now, some people are. Some people are like, okay, I'm leaving. I'll go to Steam. I'll go to get a PC. I'll do this. I'll do that. Others are still kind of in this weird middle of nowhere space where they don't know what they want to do. They just know that they don't like where things are going.
Right.
My suggestion is, don't let 2028 sneak up on you. Don't do that. Make some decisions early, because it's not going to be long before the PS6 comes out and the next Xbox comes out. And that's your opportunity to figure out an exit strategy if you really feel like this is not going to work for you anymore. But I just think that there's a lot of people straddling the fence. And I hate to say this because I don't want to make anyone sound naive, but still holding out hope that something is going to drastically turn around between now and 2028. And I think at this point, I don't know how many more times you have to hear it from Sony. This is not going away, and it's time to kind of accept that, go through your stages of grief, and come out on the other side with a clear path forward that's going to make you happy as a gamer. Because if you stick with PlayStation begrudgingly, I don't care who you are, that shit is going to catch up to you at some point or another. And that's not why you're a gamer. You should be a gamer to be happy and not feel like you're being strung along and grabbed by the wrist and pushed a certain way that you don't want to go.
100%. So, and look, keep fighting. Keep making noise, because the other part of it is, if you start to dwindle and start to kind of just be like, whatever, Xbox is looking, guys. Nintendo is looking. And they go, okay, the backlash was what, 4 months? Oh, we could do that too. It's fine. We'll take that too. Digital only. But if we keep going, and like I said, we go into this and get into a more serious approach to how we can make changes, maybe we change the course of a different company. Maybe Xbox goes, we have a way here to do something different and provide physical services. So this is not the time to redefine the exchange of goods and services where only one side benefits from it. This is not the time to do that. That's what Sony seemingly is trying to do here.
Yeah. But, man, I hate talking about this topic so much, but we had to go here. We had to cover these bases and keep people updated on what's going on. But in the meantime, let's get into our PlayStation mid-year review. Now that we're past the halfway point of 2026, it is time to give our mid-year grades to PlayStation. And to do that, we're going to start off by kind of covering all of PlayStation's year and how it took shape up until now, from their latest games to, of course, their biggest headlines. And then with all these factors in mind, we will hand out our honest, unbiased grades to PlayStation. And as you listen along, think of how you might grade PlayStation yourself, because you have a place in all this as well as a consumer. So why not think about how you grade them as well? So, Pablo, let's get started with kind of a summary of what's been going on with PlayStation this year. And let's start with games. So first-party exclusives released so far this year are God of War, Sons of Sparta, Marathon, and Saros. And of course, we still have a few more exclusives coming this year, which is Marvel Tokon, Fighting Souls, and Marvel's Wolverine. Now, aside from just the games that are coming out this year, there are some announcements that happened this year too, and that comes in the form of God of War Laufey, the God of War trilogy remakes, and Horizon Hunter's Gathering. And then in terms of timed exclusives from third parties, we have Phantom Blade Zero and Silent Hill Townfall on deck. So there's the game side of things. Of course, there were showcases too. We had 2 this year so far. I think both had some mixed reactions from the community. Some people loved them, some people hated them, some people were kind of lukewarm.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, we of course have the headlines. We have what we just talked about with PlayStation killing physical disc in 2028, which is the big one. Ending PC ports as well. Price hikes. PSSR 2.0, which is one of the positives, thankfully. And of course, Grand Theft Auto 6 marketing rights, which I think many people would say from a business standpoint was the biggest win for the platform in locking that in, which is, of course, the most anticipated video game, arguably of all time. So that is now a PlayStation thing, and that's kind of where we land. So let's talk about it. I want to hear from you first. When you think about the games, when you think about the headlines, when you think about the showcases, everything PlayStation that we've kind of absorbed so far this year, I would like to hear your grade, and I would like to hear why. Talk to me, bro.
My grade is G for goddamn you hate us. No, it's an F.
Wow.
I'll tell you what. First party games, we got a trio of niche products. We have a God of War game that is a 2D platformer that people who love those kind of games love it, but that's not what people expect from God of War. Then you have a extraction shooter, Marathon. One of the premier developers of the last couple of generations, Bungie, drops a extraction shooter. Awesome. Also niche. And Sorrows, the niche of all niches. You know, Returnal was a game that came out that people loved, but it didn't really garner a huge audience. Sorrows was always destined to be the same thing. So you have 3 games that are decent in their own right, with Marathon being really good, but people not really gravitating towards it. Sorrows being amazing, and then the conversation dying almost as soon as the game came out. So it's those things where the staying power is not there. It doesn't feel like they have a hold on what makes the console tick. It just feels like 3 games that are really, really forgettable, and that's kind of what's propping up their first half. Then we have the first party announcements. Everybody was anticipating, what is Cory Barlog working on? What is the next mainline God of War? And what we got was God of War Laufey, which I think looks great, but it wasn't what people wanted. And so that came with its own backlash. Then we got the God of War trilogy remake, which I think is a really good announcement. I think people are going to like that. But it's still kind of doubling down and tripling down on God of War. And then you got Horizon Hunter's Gathering. Incredible. Nobody wants this game, and I know that because nobody's talking about it. I think this is the first time anybody's mentioned Horizon Hunter's Gathering on a podcast in the last 6 months. So there you go, right? And look, everything else that's coming, we have the potential for Phantom Blade Zero to be amazing, Silent Hill Townfall to be amazing. But looking at the first half when it comes to announcements and games that we got released, it just doesn't feel like PlayStation was doing anything worth anything, honestly, in terms of what they released. And then, to top it all off, if that wasn't worse enough, they went ahead and decided to kill physical discs, price hikes, and PC ports, and then drop 2 state of plays that were mid to okay, you know? They had no actual impact. They feel like a platform that needs to be reevaluated. It just looks really bad. And I don't think there's no way that I can give this anything better than an F because of how anti-consumer they've been, but then they didn't back it up with anything that's worth playing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you're not the type that throws around Fs for no reason. We're not one of those, like, let's give it the worst possible grade for attention. You know, we're not doing that to kind of play rage bait games. That's like a real assessment of where things are at, because I can see how you look at this list of things and go, there's a few bright spots here, but nothing really moved the needle or defined PlayStation in a positive way. Things just kind of happened. And when things just kind of happen for a platform, that doesn't really inspire confidence. And so I think what you're calling for, especially when it comes to the not so great headlines, is we got to make PlayStation make sense. We got to evaluate, to your point, what's going on here. How can we translate this platform to the consumer base in a meaningful way again? Because right now I think people are just kind of hanging on to, well, this is where I've always been playing my games, so I'm going to just stay here. And that's not what you want to build on, even if that's working out for you so far if you're PlayStation. You need people to actually like be happy here. And I don't think they've done enough this year to make people happy here. And that's why my grade is not too different from yours. I mean, I'm at a D+, which isn't horrible, but it's pretty bad. And I think that that's how I define the year in a nutshell. Looking at the list of games that came out this year, I think God of War Sons of Sparta was not a needle mover at all. That is a complete fact, and they should never do that again. But I will say, Marathon, as niche as it was a good time. Saros, as niche as it was also a good time. Not necessarily for me, but a lot of people swear by that game, and I got to give credit where credit's due. It's not a bad video game at all. It's just that neither one of those games are what PlayStation needed to get the year off on the right track so far. That's my problem. Then when you think about the games that are still coming out, now you're in Marvel mode. And if you're not a Marvel fan, this doesn't do anything for you, seeing Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls or Marvel's Wolverine. You want stuff that feels more innately PlayStation, although I'm looking forward to Wolverine.
I am too.
There's a lot of people that I know personally who are like, man, I'm just tired of seeing this whole Marvel thing happen. It's Wolverine now, it's Spider-Man later, and I think we're just missing that creative, weird, wacky side of PlayStation that used to take bigger swings than this. You know?
A sidebar here on Wolverine, I think it's incredibly unfair what Sony is doing here, because they're positioning Wolverine as their game of the year in a way where I feel like they think that this is going to be as successful as Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Or it has to have the same impact. Did you see Spider-Man movie that just came out? It's the biggest opening movie of all time. Spider-Man is a different beast. And the expectation here of Wolverine being as big as that is just not going to happen. And so I fear that because that game isn't as impactful or even as good as Spider-Man was, I think that people are going to see that as a letdown or an L. And I don't think that's the case. I think this game could be as good as it needs to be for it to be a Wolverine game, but I'm concerned here because of the way that it's being put into the foreground. You know, like this is going to be the game that's going to really define our year.
Especially since it's not open world either, which is another issue that people are going to have. Well, it just feels like a one and done kind of game. Also, in terms of the announcements that happened this year, I think that it's just too much God of War. That's the other problem that I have. I think it's great to see that there's a lot of God of War happening, but 4 projects announced, plus a game that came out at the start of the year with that 2D pixel art one, that's just a lot of God of War, man. And I just don't think that's the best thing. I've maintained over the course of this podcast that they don't do a good job of making us miss God of War enough. And I feel a little fatigued from just hearing about God of War nonstop in some capacity, whether it's all these projects or it's the damn TV show who's swapping actors like I'm swapping draws. You know, like it's getting crazy out here.
Dave Bautista now, barely.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad pick, though. I wouldn't mind that. Yeah. But Horizon Hunter's Gathering. This is the side of Sony that I'm like, how about stop doing this? Like, why don't we just stop?
How about you?
Live service games are not doing it for them anymore. And the one thing that I will give them credit for is that even if a lot of these games are not for everybody, at least there's a good bit of single player centric titles coming out. You had Saros, you have Wolverine coming out, you had God of War Sons of Sparta for what that was. I think that the ratio is getting better. Yes. Of single player to live service, which is a nice thing to see, but it still feels like a waste of time to put Guerrilla on a live service project instead of just having them no life making Horizon 3. I don't mean that in a crunch type of way. I just mean like making that their primary focus. It just feels like a missed opportunity. So I hate seeing that. The showcases I can live with or live without. They were just kind of there. They just kind of happened. I think what was disappointing was the June State of Play being the 60 minutes plus of games.
Shown in theaters.
All of us thought this is going to be the one. And we just got your pedestrian state of play just a little bit more bloated and extended. And that was like, all right, yeah, okay. And then 20 minutes of that goes to the new God of War game, which I don't think that was the best reveal either. Then the headlines, bro.
The headlines.
You can't, I mean, we already said our piece about killing physical discs. That's an instant D for the year. I don't care what else is going on. That immediately knocks it down to a D.
That's the baseline, yeah.
Yeah. Ending PC ports. Again, I get it strategically. I don't get depriving yourself of another audience when you can make more money. I was like, okay, fine. If you want everything on PlayStation, go for it, but let's see where that goes for you. Price hikes, that's the way things are going right now with RAM shortages, the economy, everything in between. I can't put that squarely at the feet of PlayStation when everyone's having those same problems. So I'll let that go. Seeing PS5 Pro flourish a bit more over the course of this year with better PSSR implementation has been great, because I regretted buying that thing for the longest time after I got it, because it was making games worse than the base PS5, which is unacceptable. Yeah. And then GTA 6, look, you know, we can all kind of roll our eyes at that and say, all right, well, I'm not going to clap my hands for marketing rights, but if you're looking at it from a PlayStation perspective, that's a huge pickup, because Rockstar doesn't need PlayStation. PlayStation needs Rockstar. And they got Rockstar in a great position to make this game at least feel like it is a PlayStation title. And that's awesome, because this game's only coming out on 2 platforms this year. So this is a direct PlayStation versus Xbox competition thing. And even though Xbox has struggled in their own ways over the last couple of years, you still want to be able to say, hey, this is where you want to play GTA 6, no matter what. And here's why: because we have the PS5 Pro version, because we got all the rights to marketing and this, that, and the third. We're going to make our app GTA 6 colored, you know, like we're going all out with this thing. And so I applaud the fact that they really took that and ran with it. But it is also weird at the same time, them treating GTA 6 as if it's a first-party game when it's not really what it is at all. But they give it that impression like it is, and that kind of feels weird when you're also trying to position your own titles like Marvel's Wolverine as the big get for the year on PlayStation 2. So it just feels a little bit of like a conflict of interest in that they're prioritizing a third party over their own first party. And again, another lopsided aspect of PlayStation that I think is bizarre, but in the case of GTA 6, I do understand, because it is the behemoth that is GTA 6. So, yeah, I mean, look, bright spots, sure, a couple, a handful, and depending on who you are, those bright spots shine brighter. If you were a fan of Returnal and really wanted Seros, if you are a fan of Marathon over the years and wanted this extraction shooter, if you're a Marvel fan. But I think in broad strokes, when you look at all this and you go, how did they do? I think they did quite poor. And I would love to see things turn around towards the end of the year and things turning around for the better. But realistically, though, I just don't see a path forward where the year gets much better for them, because other things about gaming will define gaming better than what PlayStation can do this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it'll get better, but not in any like significant way. You know, I mean, you got Wolverine, you got Silent Hill game, you have Phantom Blade Zero. So it's definitely going to be better, but it's not going to really be defining for the platform the way it should be. We're in year 6 of PlayStation 5. We should be getting bangers after bangers after bangers after bangers, and we are not there. Next year seems promising. There was a report by Nate the Hate that Intergalactic is a 2027 game coming towards the end of the year. So we have Lao Fei, and then we have that. That's a really good 1-2 punch. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
You're right, though. I mean, it's a great 1-2 punch coming up next year with Lao Fei and Intergalactic, if those don't get delayed or anything like that. But again, I think just in terms of brand image, I don't think either of those two games combined are going to undo what has happened this year with the disc saga. But look, we'll be here at the end of the year to give our final grade for PlayStation. There's still time for some stuff to go right, but unfortunately, I think both of us, even as PlayStation fans, even as two guys that wanted to make a PlayStation podcast, have to be honest enough and say things aren't working out so well.
If you love something like we love PlayStation, you can't let shit like this fly. You have to be vocal about it. And the last couple of shows have been pretty negative. We don't hate PlayStation. We love it. That's why we are the way we are when we talk about it, because we want them to do better. We want them to really be the PlayStation from the PS2 days, the PS4 days. We want that kind of feeling back. And it's just a feeling that we're not getting right now.
We're all in a tight spot, man. Yeah, for sure. But look, that is going to do it for this week's episode of The PlayStation Effect. If you enjoyed the conversation, even if it was a little bit of a bummer, please subscribe before you head out the door. But until next time, thank you so much for taking some time to listen to our show. We really appreciate you. Stay safe, save often, and we'll see you next week.
Time to reincarnate the beast!
All right, go to bed, man.